I just wondered about on the FOI question. It seems like fairly straightforward. Why can't you just say we're going to bring you under FOI?
Well, I think we actually deserve to give the report due process, and we are going to consider that. I think the recommendations have to be taken as a package, and as I understand it, one of the concerns about freedom of information initially was the requirement to look at alternate service provision and the competitive nature of information. So the Comptroller has also made a recommendation that that not be a requirement for BC Ferries any longer. So I think in totality we can certainly take a look at that, and we've committed to looking at every single one of those recommendations, including freedom of information.
But if it was under FOI, wouldn't that have prevented you from being shocked by his salary?
Well, I think, what we've said that we want to do is look at the model as it exists today, and one of the things that matters is contemplating whether FOI is now an appropriate consideration. And again, I think you have to look at all of the recommendations. It includes looking at that key one about alternate service provision. Certainly I understand in the initial consideration that the proprietary information related to being an independent company and looking for alternate service provision was one of those considerations. So we've said we will look at that, and that's what we intend to do.
Every time the BC Rail CEO's salary comes up, the same question comes up. What on earth does he do to earn that kind of money? Why are we still paying what appears to be almost a shell company that type of compensation for executives?
Well, in fact, there are important tasks that BC Rail Properties does actually complete. In fact, they every year manage to, for the taxpayers, in terms of the properties that they sell, recover literally millions and millions of dollars. They also provide advice around the Pacific Gateway strategy. They look after Vancouver wharves. They monitor the long-term lease agreements. So there are a number of important things that they do. We have also said, in recognition of looking at Crowns, we are going to consider the future of BC Rail Properties the same way we are other Crowns.
Will
and we're doing that work.
Will you put BC Rail under FOI? Because they're currently not under FOI either, like BC Ferries, and yet they're not in a competitive situation.
We've said we're going to review all of the Crowns, and those are the kinds of questions we're asking about what exactly BC Rail Properties might look like in the future. So those are the considerations that we will make.
The BC Rail report on compensation that came out last summer says that they scrapped the executive bonus plan because they couldn't really think of anything that they could measure that would entitle the executives to a bonus. Doesn't that suggest that their mandate and workload is somewhat vague?
Well, I think certainly we've said that we are looking at the future of BC Rail Properties, and those are the exact questions that we're asking. What role is there to play? Is there a role to continue this particular Crown Corporation? We're asking those questions now. We're doing that work as we speak.
Minister, you're asking those questions
after you
now?
sold the railway, they're still trying to figure out what it is that they do that would entitle them to a bonus, and just now you're getting around to reviewing?
Well, no, in fact, we've been clear all along. There are a number of tasks that BC Rail does actually participate on a regular basis. They do look after land transactions, important revenue for the province of British Columbia. They also look at subdivisions. They look at how, in fact, the lease agreement is monitored. But we've said clearly that it's time for us to take a look at BC Rail Properties, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Their own internal cost control consisted of canceling golf club memberships and lunch memberships. Does that suggest that maybe they weren't working hard enough at trying to save the taxpayers' money to you?
Well, in fact, we've certainly seen millions of dollars of revenue returned to taxpayers in British Columbia because of the work that BC Rail Properties has done. We've also said that it is timely for us to look at BC Rail Properties and what the future may hold for it. So that work is being done as we speak.
Do you really need a former railway company looking after real estate? Aren't there other arms of government that could do that?
Well, those are the questions we're asking today. In fact, we've said we are looking at BC Rail Properties. How might we continue to either look at BC Rail Properties as a Crown Corporation, or are there other ways of managing those functions?
Isn't it a little late to be asking those
We're actually
questions?
continuing to do that review as we speak, along with other Crown corporations.
Isn't it a little bit late to be? I mean, this is several years on. Isn't this something that should have been considered at the time that BC
Rail Properties, as I've said, has returned literally millions of dollars to British Columbians in terms of land transactions. They continue to monitor the long-term lease arrangement. They work with us on the Pacific Gateway strategy. They manage Vancouver wharves. So in fact, we are in a very timely way reviewing the future of BC Rail Properties as we are other Crowns.
Off the top of your head though, Minister, do you think the work that BC Rail is doing right now warrants those kind of salaries? Like, as a gut reaction, you're the minister responsible. Do you think it warrants those kind of salaries?
What I think is that it is timely for us to review the future of BC Rail properties. That's exactly what we're going to do. They have provided an important service in terms of returning revenue, looking after properties for British Columbia taxpayers. We've said it's time to have a look at that, and that's exactly what we're doing.
You've
Thank
looked at
you.
their...
Thank you, everyone.
What?